and then Tanya. Good evening. Welcome to this workshop of the Hopkins School Board. We have 2 agenda items for our workshop this evening, and then we will move into our regular meeting starting at 7 p.m. This is going to be our last board meeting for a while, meaning like 2 months. And so we're taking care of a lot of business tonight at our board meeting. It's a relatively packed agenda. This is not technically our last workshop for June, however, because we will be hosting a candidate information night next Tuesday on the 13th, and that has been listed publicly as a workshop in case multiple board members, meaning a quorum, over 3 board members would like to attend that. So I'll speak more about that during the meeting as well. So our first agenda item for the workshop is our board goal attainment. So we did a mid-year update to our community and how we were progressing toward our board goals. And tonight at the board meeting, I'll give a year-end update of what we were able to do. I'm hoping that this conversation during the workshop can also help inform how we might want to shape our board goals moving into the next school year. And that is work that we can continue at our board workshop in August, or our board retreat in August. And that will be our second agenda item for the workshop, is beginning to plan that board retreat in August. So Elise has linked our board goals document into the agenda, so you can pull that up. And we can talk through, I think it might be most effective if we look at the actions and kind of determine whether we feel like we've done those things, or I know the Policy and Monitoring Committee is planning to do a bit of work this summer, if I'm not mistaken, so Vice Chair Andreessen can update us on that. And then there might be some actions or some different components of the goals that we might want to roll into next year. So I will take notes during our conversation so that I can update the community during the meeting. So our first goal is that teaching and learning goal, school board professional development, and we've got 3 actions there, and interested to hear your comments about if we hit the mark here, and or if there are some elements we need to carry forward.
Chair Westmoreland.
Yes.
So I think the one that I feel like I was the most probably developed on as far as the actions would be the 3rd, which talks about the nuanced understanding of social emotional learning and actions. I found that we were really able to understand how SEL has been brought into our curriculum in the academic realm, not just through basic SEL. I continue to go back to that math lesson that we had in regards to how they incorporate SEL into the actual academic curriculum. So I feel like that one, I felt we did a really great job on. I don't know that we received as much on the first one, but again, I think that's something that we're going to continue to develop as we work through the policies that are still up in front of the monitoring committee.
Thank you. There was a workshop in December on restorative practices. I know that we really leaned into that last year with our board retreat, but yes, I'll make a note of that, and that's something that we desire to carry forward, because it's going to continue to inform certainly the work of the policy committee, but also implementation-wise what's happening in our schools. So.
I think to follow up on that vein of thought, we also learned when we kind of did our deeper dive on the restorative practices that we were in the fledgling stages of instituting this restorative practices, and we were doing kind of some almost interventionist work and doing some cultural work, some changing perspectives, both within our buildings and in the larger communities around restorative culture. And now, if we revisit this with a slightly deeper dive next year, we'll be 2 years further on. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how community and building kind of understanding has shifted, if that's made the practices easier to institute, if everyone understands more about talking circles on some of the tenets that go into the restorative practices. And I would be interested personally.
I'm hearing a desire to better understand the evolution from kind of where we started with implementation to where we are now. Great.
And we've been using this year to build the frameworks. I think we would have a lot to share with you in terms of where we are now and how we can improve the consistency of implementation across all of our sites.
Great.
I think on the second action, I think that I know that I've been able to do some interesting work with more kind of at a local level, but with the state on the student-centered equity conference that I go to. I think that when we go to the MSBA conference, selecting things around those areas have been very beneficial to see how other school districts have done it and do it, as well as just connecting with and speaking with colleagues across the state. But I would like to actually see that continue. I think it's important work, and it's nuanced and continues to develop. And what else? I also would like to see, I know there was an attempt made, but I got a lot of value from being part of the parent groups or community groups that are working around certain issues. And I know last year we got some really great input from our APAC committee, and that really, I know personally, helped me broaden my understanding of American Indian education and the practices even here in our district. So being intentional about continuing that work moving forward, I think would be really great.
Excellent, thank you. And, keeping our eye out for different types of professional development opportunities too. There was a conference that just came through our email that's taking place in New Orleans this summer that had a really strong equity focus. I've mentioned, and I'm blanking on the organization, Shannon, I don't know if you remember it.
Here, I've got the email. Okay, where did it go? Here it is.
There's work, a lot of work happening. I've mentioned local progress, both our state chapter and our national school board steering committee offering. We'll be offering more and more professional development rooted in equity and anti-racism. So I will continue to update on that.
It's called Our Collective Power.
Our collective power. So yes, I think that moving this forward into our goals for next year is a great idea. Hello, Clerk Ross.
Good evening, Chair
Good
Westmoreland.
evening.
My apologies for being late.
No worries. We are talking through our board goals, kind of just focusing in on those action items under each goal to talk about where we feel like, we accomplished the action item, and which pieces we'd like to move forward into our goals for next year. And that's a conversation that will continue at our August board retreat.
Okay.
Great, so anything else on goal area 1? Okay. Let's move into goal area 2, school district and culture, community presence. So 3 action items there, and curious to hear your comments about those.
Chair Westmoreland.
Yes.
So in the first one, what I will say is when I actually achieved my goal of going to a school, it was the best day I've ever had as a school board member.
Oh, wow.
So I think this one is really important. But what I think is that it's also really hard to find the time to get into the schools as much. I think that Principal Radel and I had like 3 different times set up that like life just, but I will say that my time at Gatewood was like my favorite day ever serving as a school board member. So I think it's a really important goal, but I think it's one that can sometimes get lost in the weeds as far as like trying to find the time to prioritize it. And given my druthers, I would highly prioritize that effort moving forward.
That's great. Is there additional desire to continue that into next year?
Absolutely. You know, like Katie, those are some of the best days as a board member. Rachel and I went to, Eisenhower? North. Then I went to Tanglin for first day of school. And it's always refreshing. It makes you realize what you're in this business for when you go out and visit them.
Excellent.
And without fail, we've found Director Ross and I went to the high school a couple of times and had staff and students really go out of their way to welcome us. And we had staff lead us, and we also had students lead us, which was really interesting.
Wonderful. So our second bullet point there was around engagement sessions. And Rhoda and members of cabinet did a series of engagement sessions throughout the year that school board members attended. So there was some collaboration there. Curious to know, and I think engagement session, there can be multiple definitions, right? So I went and met with some of the parent and caregiver groups over the past month, the caregivers of gender expansive scholars and the caregivers of Black and scholars of African descent. And so those weren't like, hey, everybody come engagement sessions, but it was kind of like going to where people already were and had things they really wanted to talk about. So curious if you've engaged in ways like that with groups in the district. And then with the policy committee, I know that you've engaged with students and people who are impacted by the policies. And so I think it would be important to include some of that in this bullet point as well.
Well, I know part of the service on the LAC, we went and did some meetings with different groups. I'm trying to think. Does our, I guess our legislative breakfast would be a big community engagement piece. What am I forgetting? I feel like we have lots of conversations.
As far as those engagement sessions go, though, too, I think, it wasn't maybe as much of an like back and forth. The state of the district presentations, I think, were really key in helping some community members get up to speed, maybe with Vision 2031. I thought that was really an important message that we got out there.
Absolutely.
And I do know that actually Oscar was really helpful in getting our policy feedback forms out to directly to students so that we could get get a wider range of input on policies than only the students who show up at committees or meetings. So it was another engagement piece.
Great. And that dovetails nicely with the last bullet point, which is collaborating with our SBRs, student board representatives, to better understand the experiences, needs, and goals of our high school scholars. I think we just had like a lot of real conversation at the board table this year
Yeah.
with our student board reps. Both during workshops, because they attended most of the workshops, and certainly during the board reports too. So that was great. Are there other ways that you've communicated with student board representatives that you'd like me to highlight?
I think their involvement on different committees was really impactful again this year. Oscar was a pretty good attendant at the policy committee meetings and had great input on those. The LAC, they helped out a lot with our breakfast and were very involved in hosting the candidate forum, which I thought was really good.
And we got to visit Oscar at work over at the
Yes.
Capitol,
Oh, nice.
so.
And we got to see Joe.
Joe Ramlett?
Oh, yeah, that's
Fun.
right. That's right. Alumni.
Yes.
So I would like to see that continue, having them be part of the committees, because I think it's, yeah.
Great. Okay, anything else on goal 2?
I went to at least one student council meeting, and if Director Khan were here, I think she was the liaison, so it's kind of we're missing her perspective on here, but I feel like that's one place where we did a pretty decent job. I know she was very passionate about this point this year.
Thank you.
Did a good job.
Great. Let's move into goal 3, operations of fiscal transparency and understanding. And curious about your feedback on the 2 action items.
Chair Westmoreland.
Yes.
So I think I feel a little behind the 8 ball on this one because of the delay with the decision at the legislature. I found that to be, like, put us in a really wonky position as far as being able to get ahead of it. That said, I think from like a transparency perspective, this being like, I think my 3rd budgeting season, what I could really use is current school year compared to this school year more frequently when we're given presentations from Director Chapanduka to show us a shift in an annual basis, particularly as I was going through for this evening, right, as we're looking at each school, we were getting this school year's budgeting for each individual school, but we weren't seeing what it was last year. And being that so many individual schools have been coming to us with concerns, like the Glen Lake teachers coming and the West Junior High teachers coming, I would, and I know that there would be a difference, right? Because there's different, the grade configurations have thrown a wrench in that. But in future years, I feel like that year-to-year change is truly what the majority of our teachers and our parents are talking about, is like, there's this cut this year, not compared to what it was before. And so that year-to-year comparison, I think for me personally, and the way my brain works on the budget, would be really a helpful addition to those presentations.
Especially if the year-to-year enrollment comparisons are also there. because
Correct.
Those are directly.
Right, and it was even harder, I think, this year, being that, like, I was looking at each individual elementary school, but the budget for this year was budgeting for like 700 and some students at Meadowbrook or Eisenhower, and then this current year, they had 900 because they had the sixth graders, right? So those numbers I get are really wonky this year and have made it really hard for me to wrap my head around, but like moving forward, I think those 12-month shifts are really key.
It's a great suggestion.
With regard, I apologize, Chair Westmoreland.
No, you can just jump in.
All right. And
It's all
I know
good.
you're also taking notes, so.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Interrupt at that point.
No worries.
With regard to the Legislative Action Coalition, our Legislative Action Coalition is really on top of it. The wealth of knowledge that exists, and I'm not counting myself, actually, amongst those people, not that I don't learn a lot and apply myself very much to in the direction that they point me, but there are people who sit on that committee who have decades now of knowing the interests and the history of the people who represent us, and the wealth of knowledge there is fairly incredible, and they were up late writing letters in support. They were following bills and working hard to understand the math and the impact of different provisions on our district. And if we were to make an ask of the committee, we wouldn't want to do that last minute, but if we wanted to try to understand more, especially this coming year, it won't be a funding year, if we wanted to understand more of the process and the timeline, or we wanted an education piece that helps both us as board members and the larger community understand kind of what happens and maybe even the role of the LAC, I know we could make that ask and we could get another workshop item. And that, then we could have them here at the table beyond kind of the night where they present and we authorize their platform. So I think they could be a partner even more so than they already were.
So I hear desire to have more community education around political processes and advocacy related to education.
I think, so they're doing tons of that work, and I think with an invitation could just do that even with a bit more transparency, say like, this is the timeline upon which we do it, this is why we do it, this is through what authority, this is the reason we're doing that work.
Definitely. I'm curious about format. If a workshop is the venue that's going to reach the most people, as, you know, I'm wondering if, like, can you see how many people are watching right now? It's usually like 3. Which is like,
Sure.
and I think I know one of them. And so, but yeah, I'm curious, and this is something that we can talk about in August when we're setting the goals, is like, what might that community education look like? And
That's a good point.
maybe it's even a class offered through community education, a free class, right? Because we want people to learn about advocacy. We'll figure that part out, Alex. Perfect timing. And then, see, we want people to learn how to advocate to get more funding, right, for community ed programs. So yes, so we will make it free. Yeah, kind of thinking about how we might want to collaborate with the LAC to offer those community engagement opportunities would be really exciting.
Yeah,
Also,
absolutely. That was
I
it.
think also collaborating with CFAC as well, because I think if the community had background knowledge on like why CFAC exists, and, you know, like they have already researched like a lot of these questions that community members are coming to us about regarding the budget, I think would be helpful as well, because I think Steve had mentioned in the previous board meeting, you know, what is the cap on how much we could raise for another operating referendum? And knowing that there's a cap, community members know that we've tapped out all those types of, you know, revenue streams, and ultimately it's gonna, the rubber hits the road when it comes down to, we need more butts in the chairs. I mean, I don't know a better way to say it, but we need more people coming through, i.e. means more revenue, which will help with, if we're looking in the future to kind of grow more opportunities or more programming, then more revenue. At least that's what in the private sector is always, how do you solve problems is you get more money coming in, and then you can address any potential sales shortcut or anything like that if you have more money that's coming into the system. So I just feel like CFAC would, I mean, it's hard because I know usually with a lot of people, they glaze over when they hear anything financial, but I find CFAC, and even now, just the importance of their stewardship and what they're bringing forth for a recommendation, very helpful. And I feel like community members could have most of their questions addressed, knowing that somebody with some level of financial acumen has already scratched the surface and tried to address those issues.
I really like that idea, a deep dive into the financial component and what we're looking at specifically within Hopkins, right? Because like the legislative advocacy stuff, those are big asks that impact education statewide, right? Like no one's making a law just for us in Hopkins. So that would be cool. But I like your idea of like doing this like really specific session around what are the financial parameters that we're working with here in the district, and drawing on the expertise of our community members to educate other community members, I think is great. So, yeah, let's work that into our goals for next year.
Yeah, both of those are opportunities to shed more transparency, I think, because we saw some certainly existing confusion.
I also wanted to mention that I attended a workshop for school board members, people interested in running for school board members, and there is a great speaker who has a deep and very thorough understanding of public education funding, historical as well as current, and I would love to invite her to come and speak to our community, and wrapping that kind of really holistic educational piece into whatever we plan to do would be, I think, a really nice perspective.
Great. Do you remember her name?
No, but I have
That's
it in
okay.
my email.
You don't need it until August. We're not going to talk about this till August.
Okay, great.
Thank you. It's great. Anything else you want to make sure that I mention as I'm kind of recapping for our community tonight?
I think we could still have the goal of like producing a kind of accessible listener and user-friendly video that just describes the annual budgeting process step by step at a higher level. I'm thinking of those videos where, what is it called when somebody is talking and they're drawing the pictures to graphically represent
Yes.
important things taking place. So
Cartoons.
something like that. Or, you know, we had this idea of maybe a couple of students.
Is it
helping.
storyboarding?
Storyboard, yeah, I think so. because it is it can be very text-heavy, very, number heavy, and I'm just wondering, how do we make it as accessible as possible? And something that people can watch over and over again.
Something that's engaging, like you see
Right.
it pop up and you want to click
Yeah.
on it and watch it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that. Like the, how a bill is made or whatever. You know, that little
Yes,
cartoon strip,
yes.
yeah. But I was just thinking that's something that I really found meaningful in engaging our students in the LAC work, was getting them to, or having them really own making the videos that we show at the breakfast and then send out to our legislators afterwards. So that might be a great way to bring in a really talented and passionate student to kind of work on that.
Great ideas. Excellent. Do we feel like this accurately represents the state of things and kind of gives us a direction, at least a starting place for our August conversation? Okay.
I think too, just hearing the discussion around the board, maybe more of a focus on a multimedia approach to education and communication.
Great. Okay, so I'll prepare something for our August retreat as a starting point for our goal conversation. So we'll spend some time working on our board goals, identifying specific actions, similar to what we did for this year. I also had an idea that Rhoda thought was good, so now I'll say it. I didn't, no. So usually in August, we do a facilities tour.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what you think about combining our board retreat and the facilities tour and make it an active learning experience where we visit the virtual EDU building, our middle schools and the high school. We have members of our IDL team join us, teachers join us, and talk through, and then of course, Kevin Newman would join us and talk through the changes that have been made to the physical space and how that supports and aligns with the type of learning that will be happening in those spaces.
Will we get to see the new building?
Yes, that would be part of it.
I like that idea a lot.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping for even, slightly more expanded facilities too, right, given that all this space would be used so differently, though, of course, with deference to the fact that people will be very busy prepping for that change, and that possibly it's not practical to go to multiple stops, but I do like the idea of wrapping those things into one.
So squeezing as many sites in as possible.
Yeah. Getting on our bus.
I think if we combine the tour with our board retreat, that also just gives us more time too. If we wanted to do a full day experience
That's
and
true.
have lunch, then that would just kind of give us some more breathing room and we could be more strategic about when we're visiting different sites so that we're not disturbing the work that's happening there.
I guess one thing that I find myself feeling very passionate about, and I think this is outside of the purview of our board retreat, but when it comes to that crunch time in August for the schools, and when it comes to having a lot of new faces and new buildings, and I spoke a bit with Principal Ballard about this, but I definitely want at least I personally, and I don't know about the rest of the board, but want to be on some mailing list for when it's kind of all hands on deck, you know, if it's either prepping spaces or if it's being available in, you know, in the mornings, if it's just having extra friendly people around who are familiar with the buildings, kind of whatever it takes. I just want to be, the board for sure, to be on mailing lists. I don't know who the right person is, but so that if there's like come tour the school so that you can come, you can be here on the first couple of days. So when 50% or 67% of our students are new and holding their schedule and looking very lost, you can come here and help guide students. I think that, I know that I for sure want to be.
So volunteer
Involved in those,
opportunities
yeah.
at the beginning of the year to help support the
Yeah.
transition.
That's nice.
Yeah, that's great.
Speaking of August, not
Yes.
necessarily the board retreat.
I know, it will be here before we know it. Are there any other ideas you have for the board retreat that you'd like us to keep in mind as we start planning that?
Chair Westmoreland?
Yes.
I didn't know, do you feel comfortable that we have the policy section updated?
Did
don't
I
think
not
we
do it?
Talked about that
Oh,
yet.
I'm sorry.
And I just want to quickly
I skipped that part.
just give a
didn't I?
quick update because I've got to go pick up a kid. But so we did do the workshop on how we use the equity lens. And then we are planning this summer to do a series of work groups around specific policies that have come up throughout the year. And we're going to be engaging staff and community around that work, and specifically addressing 506, especially given the recent changes that came through the legislature around that, and talking about our new policy that we're crafting to go under our umbrella policy 102. So that's just a quick update, and we're hoping that we will have those for the full board to review at one of our first meetings in the fall.
Great.
So we'll be talking about the wellness policy, creating a new one that's focused on, based on one of our board reps' recommendation based on mental health, and then 506, immigration status. And I'm sorry, Nick, there's one other one. Do you remember? Let me pull it up. Oh, attendance policy.
Great. Lots happening in the monitoring committee. Wonderful. Thank you. I added those to the goal notes and will make sure to update on that during the meeting. And of course, I'm sure we will have policy goals to discuss in August. So exciting. Thank you very much. Okay, so for the board retreat, Rhoda and I will start planning that. Watch for an email from Elise regarding dates so that we can get a date on the calendar that works for everyone. And if you have additional thoughts about things that you would like to see during the tour, or kind of connections between space and learning that you'd like to understand better, please let us know, and we can make sure that we customize it as much as possible. Well, that's all I had. Anything else?
I think the only thing I'll add is one reflection that many of us had after the multiple community engagement sessions is to think about ways of adding value to the parent and caregiver's experience. So for example, we had an interesting conversation at, Anne was at Gatewood. I feel like we were at Gatewood, and actually Anne was the one who made this comment that the structure that we've been using is a very privileged one, where we decide on the site or the location, and then people have to come to us. And, you know, sometimes we want to structure the conversation in a way that feels more rigid than what people are hoping for or comfortable with. So two things, we wondered, are there opportunities to blend or, you know, like mix it up a little bit? So if there is a family fun night at a school, then many of us are also there in case people have questions and want to meet and greet and chat. And also that, you know, we would always orient the way we have a conversation with how it feels best for folks who are in attendance. So maybe just add that to the notes so that we can, because it will require us to be a little bit more planful, right? If we are having, you know, a meet the cabinet or meet IDL at a family fun night, then that needs to be part of the marketing. So it has to be scheduled maybe a little bit differently.
That makes sense. Thank you. I'll include that. Okay, well, we can wind down our workshop, and I'll look forward to seeing you back at the table shortly before 7. Thank you. Good evening. This meeting of the Hopkins School Board is called to order at 7:01 PM. This is our last meeting for this school year, and so if you are following along at home, it is a packed agenda this evening. And so we are going to jump right in here. As we've been doing this school year, we like to go around the table at the beginning and introduce ourselves so that you know who you've elected to make decisions on your behalf to serve our students and families. So we'll start with Director Hartland.
Director Harsh. I'm Director Rachel Hartland. I have 3 kids who are approaching the very end of their 7th, 5th, and 3rd grade years here. My spouse and I first enrolled our oldest after considering all of our metro options, and then we moved here shortly thereafter when we found that Hopkins was our perfect academic community and values match, and we have happily lived in the community in Minnetonka for almost 7 years, and I'm proud to be in my 2nd year on the board here.
Hi, I'm Katie O'Shea Peterson. In my 4th year as a school board member, parent to soon-to-be 6th and 7th graders at North Middle School.
Hi, I'm Steve Adams, and I'm in my 12th year as a school board member. And I'm the father of 2 grown adult children who attended Hopkins schools from K through 12. And as a result, are very successful in their careers.
Hi there, I'm Rhoda Marie Perry-Reed, Superintendent. I've been in my role for 6 years, and I have 2 children in our district, one at Eisenhower Elementary and one at North Junior High.
I am Jen Westmoreland. I use she, her pronouns, and I currently serve as chair of the Hopkins School Board. I'm in the middle of my 2nd term, and I grew up in this community. I graduated from Hopkins High School. I have a 6th grader, soon to be a 7th grader here in the district who will be attending West Middle School next year. And all this time, I've been leaving out this really critical component of my bio, that I was also the Hopkins Raspberry Festival Junior Princess in 1985.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for
Can you see
sharing
it?
that.
Royalty.
I need a photo.
I can't top that.
The hard one.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shannon Andreessen, and I am in my 4th year on the school board. And I parent 2 children. The youngest is a 9th grader at West Junior High, and will be starting at the high school in the fall. And I have a recent graduate who is attending the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities.
Good evening, community members. My name is Jason Ross. I'm in my second year of my 1st term. I no longer, as of tomorrow, will have 2 4th graders and 1 1st grader. It will be 2 5th graders, as I was reminded, and 1 2nd grader starting September. So it will probably be an emotional year next year because there will be the last time that the babies will be in elementary, and then they graduate over to middle school. Yeah, we've lived here for almost 10 years. It'll be 10 years next year. And that's me.
Excellent, thank you. So our next agenda item is open agenda. This is one of 2 times during our school board meetings when we hear public comment. And so community members wishing to give public comment have 2 options for doing so. You could call and leave a voicemail before the meeting starts and to have that voicemail played publicly at the meeting. Instructions for how to do that can be found in the board packet. Or you can come here and join us in person and fill out a public comment card and hand it to me before the meeting begins. We received no voicemails this evening, nor do we have any public comment cards. So we will move on to our reports. It feels a little bit sad, not just a little bit, a lot sad to not have student board representatives with us this evening. We saw two of our student board representatives earlier today at graduation, Oscar and Isabella. We are so proud of you. We know you're probably watching from home because you just like really miss doing this. So we're so proud of you, and we'll certainly miss both of your powerful voices at the table. So we will move on to our superintendent's report with Dr. Mary Perry Reed.
Thank you, Chair Westmoreland, and good evening to everyone. And thanks, Elise, for presenting. So today was a very exciting day in Hopkins Public Schools. Happy Commencement Day. And tomorrow is our final day with students, and I think we can truly say that we've had a great school year. At a lot of our parent engagement sessions, parents have been asking, so how was the school year this year? And I happily reported that we had a wonderful school year at all of our schools this year, and it's really great to be sort of on the other side of the pandemic and experience joy in all of the learning. Last Friday, excuse me, I'm going to start over. Okay, here we go. Last Friday, Eisenhower Elementary students and staff had a day of play, and look at the joy in those photos. The entire school participated in outdoor play, doing everything from blowing bubbles and hula hooping to playing basketball and digging in sandboxes. Students were allowed to choose where they wanted to go and what they wanted to play. And research does say that there are many benefits to school-based play, including improved cognitive development, higher order thinking abilities, emotional well-being, and physical health. So staff and students had a great time, and they can't wait to participate in Day of Play next year. Also last Friday, 8th and 9th graders at West Junior High had an incredible time at Pack It Up Party. So there were families who donated items, equipment, food, beverages for this fun event. Students had a blast with music. You can see the obstacle courses in the photos there, lots of inflatables, enjoyed outdoor games, pizza, ice cream, and of course, Pac-Man. Principal Camphy, who came up with the theme Pack It Up Party? Jennifer Hoyska. Oh, yes. One of our very positive and energetic parents, Jennifer Hoyska, came up with that theme, Pack It Up. That's awesome. So thanks to everyone who contributed to this great event. Now this might be the largest family photo you've ever seen. This is the entire family of Glen Lake Elementary, gathered close for a group photo with everyone wearing their Play It for All t-shirts. And a parent actually captured this photo from the roof where Principal Radel sleeps if they meet their annual fundraising goal. Hopefully there will be photos printed for every child and family because this one is really memorable. New Hopkins staff member Irie Collins, who is an employee in the facilities department, is the inaugural coach for the Hopkins girls flag football team. This team of 11 girls played hard during their very first season and went on to be the league champions. Their determination and resilience were evident in this recent championship win, especially after a challenging match against Anoka. Coach Collins said, "These players truly embody the spirit of being Royals and have shown exceptional sportsmanship throughout the season." In this slide, you'll see 4 2023 graduates: Alam Abdul Kadir, Bilal Adam, Violet Dupree Hebert, and Maya Holmes, and they were named Wallen Scholars. A Wallen Scholar is awarded a $4,000 annual scholarship for all 4 years of school to help cover tuition and other expenses. Wallen scholars also benefit from a range of academic support services, including tutoring, mentoring, and career counseling. These Royals are 4 out of 361 scholars, Wallen scholars from across 70 high schools that partner with the Wallen Family Foundation. So we're really proud of these scholars. Also at the annual AVID celebration, and AVID stands for Advancement via Individual Determination, just a week ago or so, AVID teacher Ms. Heimlich and Principal Ballard and other colleagues gathered together in the little theater so that every AVID scholar could name a teacher who had been particularly influential during their high school career and also share where they will attend college. And as many of us experienced, it's tough keeping dry eyes when our students are conveying so much love for their amazing teachers. So thanks very much to our high school educators. On May 27, the Minnesota United soccer team recognized Miss Julian and the Glen Lake Playground Project during halftime. The club honored the effort of Miss Julian and Mr. Trenda's students who have been raising funds for the accessible playground. And as you may have inferred from so many highlights during the superintendent board report, Miss Julian is now actually famous. She's been a lot of places all over the country being interviewed and highlighted for her students' work. So we thank those two teachers for supporting this student-led effort. We have a principal in Hopkins who is making statewide headlines. Principal Julius Aromaselli has been named the 2023 Middle School Principal of the Year by the Hennepin County Division of the Minnesota Association of Secondary Principals. Julius is a really wonderful school leader. He is quickly becoming beloved and well-respected by his staff, someone who is visible, approachable, strategic, thoughtful, and ethical. And I wanted to share that on 3 separate occasions when visiting North Junior High, I've been approached by 3 different staff members who have shared that Principal Aromaselli and his team, Ms. Abdi and Mr. Ware, are the best team ever, what North has always needed. So congratulations, Julius, for your work and achievements as a great middle school leader. Last Friday, seniors who are now graduates took a walk down memory lane. And this is a Hopkins tradition where our seniors are bused to their former elementary schools, including Isla, and they walk the halls in their caps and gowns, receiving cheers and claps from current students and former teachers. At one school, seniors were given letters they wrote as 6th graders, scripting out advice to their future selves. It was a really perfect way to look back before they cross the stage this afternoon, and will now look forward to their bright futures. And again, happy Commencement Day to everyone. At noon this afternoon, 486 seniors, their parents, families, teachers, and staff gathered at Maturi Pavilion, which is adjacent to the Mariucci Arena. We started promptly at noon. We ended at 1:45. Principal Ballard gave a wonderful speech. Her staff and the commencement committee had everything really well organized, and it was a wonderful event. So we're really proud of our Hopkins class of 2023. Thank you, Principal Ballard, for your leadership, and we wish our recent graduates and their families the warmest and best wishes as they head off into their bright futures. And that's it for this report.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Dr. Mary Perry Reed?
I just wanted to add when the seniors go back to their elementary schools, I was at Gatewood and saw it, and the elementary school kids get so excited. And so I know it's meaningful and wonderful for the seniors, but it's also very impactful for the elementary kids as
And the
well.
teachers.
Yeah, and the teachers, of course.
Wonderful. It's a great tradition.
It's also emotional for the high school students, too. In fact, someone that I know that was at one of the events said, "Have you ever seen a high school boy cry?" He was so moved by meeting the young kids at his former school.
Wonderful. Well, next I would look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second?
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next, I would look for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Chair Bouchard,
Yes,
I would like to, I'm sorry, Westmoreland.
that's okay.
I would like to make a motion to move the AST Oracle ERP contract to the new business at a future meeting. It was just added, it was added to the agenda today while we were preparing for graduation, and it's a 97-page document and detailing $5.2 million in expenditures. I think it deserves a little more discussion than being on the consent agenda.
So I have a motion to move the AST Oracle ERP contract to new business at the next meeting. Is there a second?
Is there a deadline on that?
Yeah. Does this need to be
Yeah,
done?
I was going to say, can Mr. Wetter speak to that as far as if there are implementation plans for that this summer?
There, yeah. Yes, there is a pretty comprehensive plan that is starting to take place. And if the board does move forward with this recommendation, then we would, I guess I'm going to suggest we would want to schedule a board meeting, a quick board meeting on June 20? Is that the next one? Does anybody else have productive ideas for this?
So we have a workshop scheduled for the 13th.
That's the candidate information
Right.
session, so we could do it right after
We could
that.
do it right after that.
On the 13th?
Director Adams, would that work?
Sure.
And is that
I
timing?
just think we need to have a longer discussion about something that's so impactful to the district.
So would that timing work then?
The 13th?
Yeah, I'm at, for the contract as it stands, like.
I don't know.
Yeah, that I'm asking.
Directors Chapanduka and Wetter, will that work? June 13?
Okay, great.
And can 4 board members attend? I think 3 of us were already going to be here. Can a 4th?
It sounds like Vice Chair Andreessen. Ken?
Yes.
Okay, so have a motion and a second to move the AST Oracle ERP contract to new business on June 13th. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries. So then that item will be removed from consent this evening. So with that, I would look for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second?
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Let's move to our treasurer's report with Treasurer Adams.
Thank you, Chair Westmoreland. Expenses of note this time include a payment of $1,696.66 to Minnesota Public Radio for the virtual EDU ads that are running on there. I don't know if anyone else has heard them. I have, and I was very impressed. So I'm glad we're doing that. Over $18,000 to ACT for test fees. So you're welcome, parents. We, as a district, have made a decision to pay the test fees for students. $2,496 for American Indian education supplies. $23,034 for a three-day field trip to Wolf Ridge Environmental Learning Center for 114 students and 30 chaperones. So that sounds like it was a fun time. $26,309 for contracted nursing services. $494,894 for the Meadowbrook remodel. And I'm assuming that's what we refer to as the old Boy Scout building. And then $252 to Larry Wade, a retired educator, for squid dissection. I wish I could have been there for that. But, with that, I move that we approve total disbursements in the amount of $2,004,576.02 for the period May 18, 2023 to May 31, 2023.
I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the treasurer's report. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. We'll move into our new business for the evening. Our first agenda item is our community education and summer programming report. We'll invite Director Fisher and our program leaders to the table, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Mary Perry-Reed.
Thank you, Chair Westmoreland. So welcome to the board table. Alex Fisher, our Director of Community Education, Fonda Contreras, our Director of Special Services, Paris Timmons, and Jaleesa Smith-Breedlove, also leaders in Innovation, Design, and Learning and Community Education. And the purpose of this report is to provide school board members and the community with a comprehensive overview of our summer programming. So we have a lot of exciting things happening for children and youth of all ages this summer, and we want you to have a good understanding of what we're about to launch. So I'll turn it over to Alex.
Thank you, Dr. Mary Perry-Reed. Good morning. Good afternoon, board directors. Thank you for having me here. It's always a pleasure to be with you. Chair Westmoreland, it's nice to see you again. Happy to be here and talk about our summer programming. I will hook up here, and hopefully you can see my presentation. Okay, wonderful. One quick sec. Okay. So this summer we have things happening, so many things happening. It's really the time of the year where schools go on break. Many of our scholars go off in separate directions, but some of our best programming of the entire year takes place in our district, and we're really excited to present some of the programming to you this evening. So we have three kind of main buckets of programming happening this summer. There's targeted services and credit recovery happening, our special services program, and our community education programs. So I am joined with me tonight by three of our leaders. So Fonda Contreras will talk about special services summer programming. Paris Timmons will talk about our Freedom School programming and credit recovery. And Jaleesa Smith-Breedlove will talk about our Camp Royal, our targeted services programming, and some of our community ed programs. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Jaleesa to talk a little bit about the Royal Learning Academy.
Hi, everyone. So this summer for our Rural Learning Academy, we've undergone some changes to better represent and reflect the needs of our students. So in partnership with Paris Timmons and IDL and Community Ed collaboration for this program, we plan to serve about 380 students over a Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. program over 6 weeks, June 20th through July 28th. And these students will be served by 22 teachers, 4 paraprofessionals, 4 AmeriCorps fellows, and an MSW intern from St. Thomas University. The Rural Learning Academy will use a variety of learning techniques, like focusing on literacy, math, SEL, and then reinforcement by hands-on enrichment and off-campus opportunities led by our teachers. The program has been built around our core values of authentically inclusive and intentionally adventurous has been our theme, with using a variety of learning and curriculum, but overall wanting to create a fun experience for those students who have been recognized of needing additional learning without feeling penalized for having to spend their summer with us, but wanting it to be something that is rewarding and fun for them to return to the school year ready to learn along their peers.
Okay. Oh, you already did it. Okay, so for credit recovery, these courses are being offered to scholars, grades 9 through 12. It will take place at Hopkins High School. We'll have around 350, upwards of 400 potentially, scholars that will be served in this program. It is a succinct program at 18 days where scholars can earn up to 4 credits. Some of the classes that are being offered are all core content classes, your science, social studies, math, and English classes, as well as some other classes required to graduate, physical education, health, and modern nonfiction. Our Freedom School program this summer has extended to offer to service scholars grades currently in grades 5 through 9. Scholars that are going into middle school, we wanted to make sure that we captured those scholars as well. Do I go louder? Is that better? Okay. We wanted to make sure that we captured scholars that were going to enter the middle school next year so that they can get a jump start and build relationships with who they're going to be going to middle school with. Freedom School, the core foundation of it is the integrated reading curriculum. So scholars are immersing themselves in books surrounded by the theme of I Can Make a Difference. Every week has a sub-theme, and then the books correlate to that sub-theme. So I can make a difference in myself, my family, my community, my world. I'm missing one. Oh, I can make a difference through hope, love, and action. And then in the afternoon, we have lots of enrichment activities where we took Scholar Voice to create a schedule that excites them. One of the things, or several of the things that will include continued financial literacy courses, as well as a partnership with the Sojourner Project, as well as My Health, to come in and speak with our scholars about topics that kids want to talk about, and maybe their parents don't. So, it's going to be wonderful. We also are doing Girls Who Code as well for the summer, and then a few other enriching opportunities. And then we also go on field trips every week. It's all experiential learning things that expose scholars to real life experiences. This year, during the National Day of Social Action, which is July 19th, all of Minnesota Freedom School partners will go to the state capitol and rally to, and our subject is gun violence, with our with our tag, I guess, of no child is, or kids are not bulletproof. And so we are going to dig deep into how to just advocate for our babies, because they're all our babies. And then once a week, we have family engagement meetings with our families to come in, and we build community with one another. We also have some of our partners that we've partnered with to come in and connect with families, giving resources and providing support. And then we have completed both sets of training, all of our staff. Of our 13 staff, 7 of them are members of Black Men Teach. And then, we completed the Minnesota local training as well as the national training in Knoxville, Tennessee this past week. It was quite a remarkable experience. I have no words as to how incredible it was, and look forward to seeing our staff and scholars implement this amazing program.
Good evening. In addition to the work that Jaleesa and Paris has done to help increase our scholars with unique needs to access programs that are for everyone, they've really done a good job. So we've had a lot more scholars on IEPs access the Royals program and Freedom School. In addition to that, we are offering extended school year for our scholars on IEPs for those learners ages 3 to 21. So students at Harley, our elementary sites, the high school, and Transition Plus will have the opportunity to work on some of their IEP goals in the areas of functionality, academic skills, adaptive behavior, social skills, and communication, whether it's individual or a combination of those skills. And the majority of our staff that work with them during the year will provide that support this summer for our scholars so that they can maintain kind of the skills that they've worked on individualized this year. In addition, we also have compensatory education for a lot of the areas that have had hard to fill positions, such as speech services and at one of our sites, social work. So it's a way of us providing those services when we didn't have those vacancies filled. So that will be some work this summer. And we continue to gather the data and progress monitor to make sure our scholars are getting what they need. So, thank you.
Okay, so in addition to those programs, we also have plenty of community education programs happening this summer. Camp Royal, as you all know of, will happen starting Monday, actually. We have training happening tomorrow and Thursday for our leads and assistants. And then starting Monday, Camp Royal begins. And then the following week, the Targeted Services Program, which we're calling Royal Learning Academy, starts. And so those two programs, next week excluded, but after that, those two programs will kind of run side by side, and there will be opportunities during recess and lunch for shared experiences together. In addition to Camp Royal, Kids and Company, Blink, which is for our grades 5 through 7, ECFE classes, Hop Kids, which is our preschool enrichment program. Excuse me. And there'll be summer preschool, junior high and senior high enrichment, and adult enrichment classes, as well as our adult options, English classes, and GED prep classes. So to tell you a little bit more about Camp Royal is Jaleesa.
Just to add what Alex is saying, with all of the programs happening in the district, we'll have just about under 3,000 students across all of our campuses and all of our programs this summer. Wow. So just to give you an idea of how busy the campuses will be this summer. So for Camp Royal, we'll have an offering of about 230 camps with this program having 1,500 students alone participating in Monday through Thursday activities, beginning June 12th and going through August 17th. Families are able to choose full and half-day camp experiences. We've been able to see an increase in participation for Camp Royal going forward, and our newest offering has been scholarship. So we've been able to award, this is probably outdated from last week, but 40-plus scholarships awards to make sure that all families are able to participate in some sort of summer activity. And we also see families who are participating in the other summer programs also participating in Camp Royal as well. So creating more inclusion and equity in that program and who we serve. We'll have camps, a variety of camps, so cooking, dance, STEM, robotics, horse camp. We'll have swim, we'll have leadership opportunities in Camp Royal, and this is all located here at Eisenhower for those programs. And so we'll have, I believe, 3 or 4 of our Hopkins High School seniors on staff this summer, so they'll be here with us still, giving back to the younger group. And yeah, and then we serve first through K through 6 for Camp Royal.
So early childhood Assistant Director Chauvin was scheduled to join us this evening, but she had an urgent matter that she had to take care of, so she wasn't able to join us. So I'll just speak briefly about what's happening. So summer school, one of the big things we're excited about is combining our ESY classes, our ESY program with our preschool, and having that. I'm looking at you, Fonda, hoping you can
Yes.
pitch in here.
So some of our students in early childhood will be able to join some of the preschool classes that are on IEPs.
Thank you. And ECFE classes, we'll continue with our outdoor ECFE, early childhood family education classes. That was a big hit that started in COVID, and families really appreciated the opportunity to learn outdoors, so we'll continue doing that. We have a total of 88 families participating, and we also will work with families to make sure that our youngest learners are ready for kindergarten. So we have for preschool. So we have a preschool readiness class that happens through ECFE as well. Adult options, as I hope you all know, you're invited to our GED graduation on June 22nd. At 7 p.m., and that will take place in the Eisenhower Community Center Theater downstairs. As they usually do, the Minnetonka Rotary Foundation will be sponsoring that evening. They always give us generous donations for that event. We're very grateful for that. And then, excuse me, we'll start summer online classes for English learners and for people studying for their GED. That will start on Monday and go through July 27th. Monday through Thursday, there's morning opportunities for 2 hours, and then there's also evening opportunities for 2 hours as well. And the registration for next year will begin in August. So that is our presentation for this evening, and if you have questions, we'd love to answer them.
Excellent, thank you so much. It's going to be a busy time around here this summer, and you've all been working so hard to make sure that happens and that it all goes smoothly. So thrilled that Freedom School is continuing to happen this summer. Is this our 3rd year of offering? Second. Okay. Just such an incredible program with an amazing legacy and fits so well with our work at Hopkins, and wonderful how you've adapted it to include 5th graders. So very excited about that. Board, we do not need to take action on this, but welcome your comments and questions for the team.
Chair Westmoreland.
Yes.
How many students do you say are going to be served by all these programs this summer? I heard a number. I didn't hear a number, but how many?
Just over 3,000 students
Wow.
across those programs.
Okay, cool.
And that's pre-K through 11?
Oh, I didn't even include pre-K, so we'd probably be about 38. No, they take about 500, 300, so probably 33
Close,
plus.
yeah, probably closer to 3,200 or so.
Probably just shy.
Amazing.
But we're going to be counting. I really want to know the number this summer because there's lots of new programs and lots of things happening, so.
Terrific, thank you.
I just wanted to quickly thank you for all your work. I think that amazing things are happening, and I love the focus on inclusion and equity and opening up access to our summer programming. I know as a parent, I found so much value in the offerings in summer, but also knowing that there were a lot of parents and scholars that just didn't have that opportunity. So I love seeing all the ways in which you're bringing community together around learning, but in a very experiential and meaningful way. So thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time to be here with us this evening, and look forward to kind of visiting and seeing what's going on this summer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your work.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to our acceptance of the long-term facilities maintenance plan, the 287 resolution. I'll invite Director Chapanduka to the table and turn it over to Dr. Mary Puri-Reed.
Thank you, Chair Westmoreland, and welcome to the board table, Mr. Chapanduka. So we are required to have our school board approve Intermediate School District 287's long-term facility maintenance budget, as well as authorize the inclusion of a proportionate share of their long-term facility maintenance projects and related debt service payments in our district's application. So that's what this agenda item is about. And Terrell, would you like to explain further?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Mary Puri-Reed. Good evening, Chair Westmoreland, respective board members. So this is a resolution we do on an annual basis. Since we are part of the Intermediate 287, we are supposed to be sharing a proportionate component of their debt service as well as their pay-as-you-go, one for their deferred maintenance, as well as any other construction projects happening at 287. So the resolution is authorizing the district to include as part of our long-term facility maintenance $94,891.55, which comprises of $15,180 for pay-as-you-go projects, as well as $79,710.95 for debt service payment for their 2017 facilities maintenance bond, as well as their 2022 facility maintenance bond. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Chapanduka. Any questions or comments from my colleagues?
Yes, I have a question. Was this as expected and in line with what in previous years we've been given from them?
Correct, yeah. So when we look at the historical components, their debt service has always been around $95,000. What they do is when they go out to sell the bond, they bring together all school districts which are part of the Intermediate 287, just to make sure that we can fit in their long-term facility maintenance within our long-term facility bond sale. So on average, it's about the $94,000 to a $100,000 bond. In 2022, they did sell a $4 million bond, which kind of added a few $100 to their debt service. But it definitely is in line with what we've seen through the last few years, at least since I've been in the district, around that $95,000 to $100,000 mark.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments for Director Chapanduca? So this will be a roll call vote. So I would look for a motion that the board approve the resolution on District 287 long-term facilities maintenance budget and the portion of the allocation to be shared with the school district.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Clerk Ross.
Chair Westmoreland,
Aye.
Vice Chair Andreessen,
Aye.
Treasurer Adams,
Aye.
Director Peterson,
Aye.
Director Hartland,
Aye.
Director Ross, aye.
Thank you, Clerk Ross. We have 7 ayes, 0 nays. Motion carries. Thank you, Director Chapanduca.
I would like to correct the record.
Yes.
We had 6 ayes.
Oh, I apologize. We have 6 ayes, 0 nays. Thank you. Motion still carries. Thank you very much, Director Chapanduca. We'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the adoption of the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Mary Perry Reed.
Thank you again, Chair Westmoreland. So tonight we are asking the board to adopt the fiscal year 23-24 final budget in its final read. In April, the board approved the 22-23 revised budget and the 23-24 preliminary budget. And then on May 23, the board reviewed this fiscal year 23-24 budget in first read. And this is the culmination of an annual budgeting process that includes weekly budget transformation meetings with district and school leaders, school board workshops, recommendations from our Citizens Financial Advisory Committee, allocations of the budget and staff allocations within the predictable staffing models given to our principals and department leaders. And of course, we have recently heard from the state legislature around the budget increases as well as new policies coming through. Director Chapanduca, as you can see on the slide here and also linked in the board documents, Director Chapanduca and his team have put together a very, very comprehensive budget book with a lot of just a massive amount of information that I think our community will also find helpful. It covers much of the information that has been presented in various meetings, as well as the predictable staffing models allocated to the schools. So at this time, I will let Director Chapanduca, maybe at a high level, since this is a very comprehensive document and very detailed, at a high level provide an overview, and then we will see what questions our school board members have.
Thank you, Dr. Mary Perry. Again, good evening, respective board members in the community. What I will probably do is to maybe concentrate on the high level pieces of what we are bringing to the board, putting into consideration some of the information we've already shared either at the board table or through other community initiatives we've been attending to in the last few weeks. What has not changed in this budget is our enrollment projections. Based on what we've brought to the table in terms of what we are seeing with our enrollments, those numbers at this point in time, they are still reflective of what has been calculated. We'll come back later on to update leadership around when we start to see the actual numbers coming into the buildings. If we start to see more students coming in, we do have some resources on the side to be able to address any new enrollment coming into the system, or if there's any shift of enrollment across different programs or buildings. What has changed in the budget is we factored in a 4% revenue increase based off of what we have from legislature. We have also factored in some components around where that 4% will be applied towards in terms of resource allocations. So again, a lot of the information is still kind of preliminary when we start to look at negotiations and the work we are doing with different bargaining units. So just to ground us, we added a component. I know when we came to the board through CFAC, we had a recommendation from CFAC of a 3% increase, and also looking at some of the conversations which are ongoing with bargaining units. We've kind of factored in an additional 1% to the cost of living adjustment. We've left the increases on fringe benefits at 3%, 7% inflationary increases for purchase services as well as supplies, 7% inflationary increases for utilities and energy, and part of the structure will also be adding some additional resources to the buildings, either through some of the categorical funding, since the new initiative around compensatory revenue requires that we channel 80% of all generated compensatory revenue to the buildings which are generating those resources, and then we can hold on to about 20%. The current structure, which we've been operating on in the last 2 years, was based on 75% of compensatory going back into the buildings where those dollars are generated, and 25% addressing some of the district-wide initiatives. So we'll just have to adjust about 5% to meet what the state is mandating us to do. We've not factored in any of the additional remaining dollars around ESSA 3. We are still, we did give the dollars into the buildings in fiscal year 23. Any remaining dollars, once we close our fiscal year, buildings will carry those dollars forward into next year to address any needs. Just knowing that fiscal year 24 will be the last year where we can actually use those dollars. And beyond that, we'll just have to be dealing with the usual either state general education aid or any other federal grants we have been receiving, either under title or under other state resources. So that being said, overall, as a system, our total budget across our different operations and funds is $166.7 million. 74% of that is the general fund. When we factor in the additional resources we are receiving between the general education aid and the special education, our total general fund budget will be $123,076,025. Previously, it was 116 before we factored in the additional resources. 2% of the overall budget for the district covers food services with $3,961,042. 7% is community education with $11,101,326. 8% is debt service. $30 million, $469,054 to cover any of our debt for bond maintenance. 9% is our construction and capital projects, which is $15,149,970 for a total of $166.7 million across our different operations and projects. So on the general fund, I will reiterate again the summary in terms of what we have. Initially, when we developed the preliminary budget, our total was $116,880,277. And again, as we started to get new information around what the inflationary components are for the basic allowance, we've gone back and made those adjustments. And as I mentioned at our previous board meeting, when we did the first read, some of the additional resources, we have about $1,957,230 coming through basic allowance revenue, which is a component of that 4%. Like I mentioned earlier when we presented this at the last board meeting, because of the fact that there's been a lot of shift in terms of enrollment, when we look at our base year fiscal year 23 into fiscal year 24, if we factor all the components, a 4% actually literally tends to be about 3% to the district. And I'm hoping that our numbers will come out mirroring what we've projected going into next year, so that we don't really see any other shift beyond what we've experienced for fiscal year 23 into fiscal year 24. $39,132 is declining enrollment. $247,725 is additional compensatory revenue. $296,414 is English learners. $14,234 is operating capital. $106,660 is transportation passage. For a total of about $2.6 million. There might be some other adjustments as we get more information. We'll still come back to the board later on, probably into spring, to update the board. Once we know if any new enrollment is coming in, that might also reflect additional resources coming to the district, or if there's any other adjustments. We also have about 3.5 in special education to give us a total of about $6.1 million new revenue resources coming into the district. And the $3.5 million for special education reflects about 31% increase, which is the largest increase we've received so far. And I know there's language in the legislative update about additional cross-subsidy gap being closed into the next 2 fiscal years. So that being said, once we start putting everything together, we've reflected an increase of about $6.1 million. So our current referendum, including equity options, is $23,117,356, which reflects about 18.8% of our total general fund budget. 11% or $12,914,797 is capital projects levy. About 1% or $1.4 million is our achievement and integration aid. 4.4% or $5,416,377 is our compensatory aid. $688,547 or 0.6% is our learning language proficiency, which is the English learners language. 11.8% or $14.5 million is our special education. 2.5% or $3,029,364 is our federal grants. 0.3% or $409,360 is our extended time, and 50% or $61,597,366 is the non-categorical revenue, for a total of $123,076,025. On the expenditure side, $67,457,636 or 56% is our salaries and wages. 23.52 or close to 24%, $27,492,207 is our benefits. 14.82% or $18,820,693 is our purchase services. 2.87% or $3,852,550 is our supplies. 1.49% or $3,241,805 is our capital expenditures. 1.3% or $2,211,134 is our other expenditures, which may be dues and other conference or any items which don't fit in within the other object codes within UFAS. So those expenditures reflect some of the changes we've made in terms of resources either being channeled back into the buildings through the basic allowance, or resources being channeled into special education based on the new resources we are receiving, as well as other feedback we've received from our buildings and program leaders around any gaps which were not addressed when we did the preliminary budget. And I'm hoping that as we start to map everything together in our systems, we'll be able to get confirmation and feedback around if there's any other additional resources needed across our system. So when I start to actually break the allocations, and I know we had talked about this last time, so definitely there's a slight change just because of the fact that some of those resources have been allocated either into buildings or into other district-wide programs. So for direct school allocations, our new allocation based on new information is $71,518,835 or 58%. District-wide allocations, 36%, $44,548,757. Department allocation, $7,008,433 or 6%, for a total of $123,076,025. So when I presented this information at the previous meeting, our department allocations were sitting at about 5%. What we've also done with the new resources is to allocate resources towards our holistic school safety, where in the past, we've been trying to put together a comprehensive plan on what we need to address within the holistic school safety environment. So we've used some of the additional resources to be able to at least start the groundwork on addressing some of the infrastructure or some of the needs in our different buildings. On the food service, like I mentioned earlier on, food service revenue, we are planning to actually budget $3,961,042 and expenditures of $3,890,878, leaving us with a surplus of $70,164. And again, due to the fact that we'll be implementing the universal meals, we are still trying to gather information on what that will look like in terms of participation. Since for the current year, we're using the National School Lunch Program, and we'll be pivoting to the universal meals. For community aid, revenue of $11,101,326 and expenditures of $11,064,462, leaving us with a surplus of $36,863. And I think you also had some of the plans based on the community aid team which presented earlier on. For building construction and capital project funds, which is part of our long-term facility maintenance, which was presented to the board at our last meeting. We have $50,149,970 for revenue and $15,149,970 for expenditures. For debt service, to service our principal and interest for our bonds, we have revenue of $30,469,054 and expenditures of $30,469,054. So that sums up the overall budget components of our fiscal year 24. Again, we'll still come back to the board later on in the year to update if there's any changes which needs to be factored into our fiscal year final budget. I will take any questions.
Thank you very much, Director Chapanduka. It's nice to see those stronger numbers now that we know exactly what we're getting. And as my board colleagues requested, the individual budgets for each school are in the packet that's linked to the board agenda, so our community members can see how our resources are being allocated. So I will open it up to questions or comments from my board colleagues.
Chair Westmoreland.
Director Adams.
Truro, I appreciate the breakout by school, and that was very, very helpful and instructive. I was noticing, however, well, based on the number of emails we've gotten, I'm sensitive to what we're spending on music. And I noticed in all the elementary schools, there's a line item for band and there's a line item for orchestra. But when you get to the secondary schools, there are none for any music. Is that included in a different line item, or where are the music programs for the secondary schools indicated?
Okay, I'll have probably the superintendent help me in narrating this. I mean, just as a summary, depending with the different structures at the secondary levels, they've allocated resources for music. So maybe superintendent might have more context, or some of our principals in the room.
Thank you for the question. So in elementary, our music teachers are specialists, and every child, well, actually, I should check with, I'm looking in the audience here, audience help. So I think every kindergarten through fourth grader gets vocal music, and then band or orchestra, general music, and then band or orchestra is selected by fifth and sixth graders. So we designate that, we denote specific music staffing at the elementary level because it's a predictable and regular rotation.
Okay.
And then at secondary, it's based on registration. Now, yes, choosing an arts is required in International Baccalaureate, but the amount of staffing that is allocated to, drawing and painting or band or orchestra or choir is based on student registrations.
Okay. All right. So to be determined.
Well, principals right now are, most of them are near 100% with student registrations, and they are working through their staffing process to say, okay, here's how many kids signed up for this kind of math and that kind of art and this kind of music. Therefore, this is how I'm going to allocate the staffing that I've been
And
given
they would
through
be
the predictable staffing model.
They would be considered classroom teachers in that case, because there's a line item for
Correct.
classroom teachers.
Correct.
Thank you.
Chair Westmoreland?
Yes.
Dr. Mary Perry, can you speak to whether or not the leaders of the schools have seen these numbers and if they've given us feedback at all on those?
The predictable staffing models?
Yeah, the
Oh,
numbers that we were looking at in the, in the board packet that had each individual school breakdown and their allocations, have those been sent to the individual school leaders?
Absolutely.
And have we gotten any feedback from those school leaders, or have the teachers seen those numbers?
Yes, we've gotten feedback, and part of the feedback is what actually helped us in determining the additional allocations based on some of the gaps. So principals have seen these numbers from the beginning because we work with them from when we start the budget process in terms of identifying the priorities, and then we build the predictable staffing model, and it's always shared with the principals starting in when we get the projection after October 1, and then we go back and forth. So one of the things I'd mentioned earlier on when we were working on the ratios and the range for the predictable staffing model, we did give opportunity to principals to at least guide us in terms of, okay, what would be an ideal situation when we start to move the ratios or the ranges to address any concerns we may have either through adult to student ratios. And we costed everything, and we brought a comparison back to leadership around, okay, if we continue with our predictable staffing model 2.0, which is based on the numbers we have, and then if we pivot to where certain ratios have dropped down based on addressing some of the needs, what would that mean in terms of any flexibility around our resources, which can be through discretionary, where leaders have autonomy and flexibility around what it is that they are addressing in their building based on building priorities.
Okay. Thank you.
Chair Westmoreland.
Director Ross.
I just have one question, just so the community members understand. I'm assuming there was, I know that there was analysis that was performed where there's no more revenue that could be extracted from the system where we could revoke and reissue the operating referendum that was passed in 2017. I know it's good until 2027 with that 10-year with the 10-year compliance, but I'm assuming that that is not something that is available at our disposal. And again, this is just so that community members understand, like, this is the revenue, and it kind of is what it is at this point.
Sure. To address your question, Director Ross, the unfortunate piece is there are caps in terms of the operating referendum. So there are two components here. one component is controlled by the board. So there's the tier one, local options, which is divided into two. One is $300 and the other one is $424. So the board has control over the $724 local options. And then the other piece is actually the voted operating referendum. When I looked at the numbers, I think we are sitting at the cap of about 2,134 after factoring in inflation, meaning that we have kind of reached that max. Unless if the state goes back, and I know there's been, bills which have been proposed in terms of, okay, do we, and I know I've met with other surrounding school districts around some of the initiatives we're trying to push around. Do we bring some flexibility back to the board where they can actually increase the local options without going through a referendum? And I think that has kind of gone back and forth, and I don't know if it carried any traction. But just to summarize what you are asking, yes, we definitely are capped. So it's difficult for us to really swiggle. Sometimes what happens is we can revoke the current referendum and see if we can get a new referendum. But what that does, it usually just factors in the inflationary components.
Thank you for your work and your attention to this, Director Chapanduka.
Oh, thank you.
Additional questions or comments from my colleagues? I would look for a motion that the board adopt the fiscal year 23-24 final budget in final read. We already did first read. In final read.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt the 23-24 budget in final read. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Director Chapanduka.
Thank you.
Thank you, Churro.
Thanks, Drew.
Next, we'll move on to our board goal attainment. So at the beginning of every school year, we develop shared board goals, and we typically start this process in June and then finalize our board goals in August or September. And these are typically informed by what we're hearing from community members regarding your priorities for better understanding the work of the board. So in this year's board goals, we had a lot around education and engagement. We typically have a board goal related to board member professional development because we know that our public education landscape continues to shift and that we need to stay on top of what's going on, not just here in the metro area, but across the state and across the country. And we use these board goals to guide our work throughout the year. So the last time I spoke about the board goals at the table was in January, when I gave our community our mid-year evaluation. And at the workshop directly before this meeting, the board engaged in a conversation around what we felt went well, what specific action items under each of our goals we were able to accomplish this year. We talked about some examples of that work. We are a diverse board. We move through different spaces in the community, and so we were able to share some of the really specific work that each one of us has done toward that goal attainment, as well as our collective work. And we talked about some elements of those goals that we would like to move forward into our work next year. And the discussion that we started tonight during the workshop, we will pick that up again in August during our board retreat to fully flesh out those goals to inform our work next year. So we had 3 goal areas for our board goals this year. The first was teaching and learning. And we talked through our specific action items. So the first one was school board members will develop a deeper understanding of restorative practices and how they are used throughout the district. So we had a workshop on restorative practices in December. And there is a real desire amongst board members to continue this work. We certainly know that our district has committed to implementing restorative practices across all spaces in our community. And we have some curiosity around how that work has been evolving. And if the increase in understanding among community members regarding what restorative practices are and why they're important, if that has helped to facilitate this work within the district. And so looking to move that into our board goals for next year. Second action item, school board members will learn about best or next practices in anti-racist and equitable education locally and nationally, and how we can apply these in Hopkins. And so board members gave examples of conferences and trainings that we've attended, including a student-centered equity conference, equity-driven panels and sessions at the MSBA conference, work through local progress, and there is a strong desire to continue this work into next year. Third action item, school board members will develop a more nuanced understanding of social emotional learning and actions that support scholar and mental health. So we had a great conversation about how this concept of SEL was really embedded into many of the board reports that we got from our IDL team this year at the board table. And we had a really unique opportunity to work with, to learn more about how SEL is being integrated with math and math learning across the district. And so really appreciated that opportunity to dig deeper. Our goal area number 2 was school district and culture. Regarding community presence, community engagement. So the first action was board members will pair up with schools to visit throughout the year, participate in events, and intentionally engage with scholars, staff, and leaders. And there was kind of this consensus during the workshop that this is the best part of board work, is being able to go into our schools, really interact with students and staff and leaders, and there is a very strong desire to continue this next year. Second bullet point, school board members will hold engagement sessions about school board decisions related to Vision 2031, policy, and budgeting. So we collaborated with Dr. Mary Peary-Reed and other district leaders to hold engagement sessions this year, including the state of the district. We have attended parent and caregiver groups. The LAC has been involved in engagement with leaders in our community and community members wishing to learn more about the legislative process. We have engaged around policy creation, and there is a desire to continue this work, of course, and create some user-friendly videos that are visually engaging to describe specific concepts related to the decisions that we make at the board table. So we're hoping to find some students who are tech savvy and have a passion in this area. We also thought it would be really cool to do some storyboarding to make it really visually compelling. So moving that work into some of our goals for next year. And then the third bullet point under goal 2 was school board members will collaborate with student board representatives to better understand the experiences, needs, and goals of our high school scholars. If you have tuned into school board meetings before, you have no doubt experienced some of our robust conversations with our student board representatives, both at workshops and at the meetings. We have truth tellers, and that is exactly what we want them to do. And so we've been able to collaborate with them that way, and their input has really shaped how we think about our decision-making here at the board table. We also had student board representatives who were involved in different committees, our policy committee and LAC, Legislative Action Coalition, for example. There is a strong desire to have our student board representative program continue and definitely have our student board representatives serve on committees because that has been really, really impactful. We'd like to recognize the work of Director Khan, who served as the liaison for our student board representatives and engaged with students at the high school as well as Director Hartland. They attended a student council meeting, and we know that Director Khan was doing really hard work engaging with students beyond our student board representatives as well. So goal area 3 is operations, and it's broken down into 2 different areas, fiscal transparency and understanding and policy transparency and understanding. So under the fiscal component, first action item, school board members will partner with the superintendent and director of business services to hold budget, education, and engagement sessions. And this is something where we think we could do a stronger job of this next year. There were a lot of things in the mix this year. We were waiting to find out what was going to happen with the legislature. We were, of course, as you heard during the final budget presentation, receiving updates all along between January and June, but thinking about ways that we can bring community members into this process more specifically next year. Director Ross had a wonderful idea to hold kind of a community education session with members of our Citizens Financial Advisory Committee who are community experts, with community members with financial expertise, and then of course our Director of Business Services as well. So looking at doing some of that work next year. Next bullet point was school board members will collaborate with the LAC, Legislative Action Coalition, to educate community members about statewide public education funding issues and invite them to participate in advocacy. So our LAC hosted several education-related events, including a candidate forum. They put out calls for letters of support to advocate for various bills at the legislature. And we all expressed a shared desire to have more opportunities like this for community education around political processes and advocacy. And Director Fisher has already started thought partnering with us on how we could do this through community education. So looking forward to integrating that into our work for next year. And last but certainly not least, our policy transparency and understanding. I've said many times at this board table that our monitoring committee just has had some pretty monumental lifts between last year and this year. We've given them a lot of work to do. So the first action item was that the school board would hold a workshop on how the monitoring committee uses the equity lens to review and establish policy. We did hold that workshop, and Vice Chair Andreessen and Director Ross, Director Peterson, members of our monitoring committee, have done a great job of helping us understand how that equity lens is used to review and establish policy when those policies come before the board table. Second action item, school board members on the monitoring committee will partner with the assistant superintendent to hold policy, education, and engagement sessions specifically on the revisions of policy 102, equal opportunity education, and 506, student conduct and discipline. So there were some elements included in bills at the legislature this session that impacted both of those policies. And so our monitoring committee is now integrating those changes into the policies. We'll be holding engagement sessions with staff and community members this summer and bringing those policies to the board table in the fall. What did I forget?
It's pretty comprehensive.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. No action needed on that. That was an update for our community members. And if you have ideas of things that you think that we should be doing in terms of our work for next year, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can email the entire board, you can email board members directly, and we can bring your comments then to our board retreat in August as we continue to work on our goals for next year. Okay, our next agenda item is the resolution calling for an executive session for the superintendent year-end review. And so I'll read the resolution, and then this requires a roll call vote. So we'll do the motion, and then I'll turn it over to you, Clerk Ross. It is hereby resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 270, Hopkins, Minnesota, meet in executive session to conduct the superintendent's year-end review for the 2022-2023 school year, that the meeting be held in person and commence immediately following the adjournment of this regular meeting. Further, that it be noted that all board members, superintendent, and clerk were duly notified of this intention to call the executive session. I would look for a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second?
I have a motion and a second to approve the resolution calling for executive session for the superintendent's year-end review. Any discussion? Seeing none, Clerk Ross.
Chair Westmoreland,
Aye.
Vice Chair Andreessen,
Aye.
Treasurer Adams,
Aye.
Director Peterson,
Aye.
Director Hartland,
Aye.
Director Ross. Aye.
Thank you, Director Ross. We have 6 ayes, 0 nays. Motion carries. Next, we'll move into our board member reports.
Chair Westmoreland.
Director Adams.
In the last 2 weeks, I attended the Avid celebration at the high school, which is always one of my favorite things to do at the conclusion of the school year, and got to hear some of our scholars up there attest to the great help that Avid has been to them, and express a lot of admiration and just love for the people that conduct that program up there. And then following that, I had a chance to look at the graduating seniors on the wall, which is a pretty impressive display up there. The following day, we had a somewhat hastily called LEC meeting to debrief regarding the just concluded legislative session, and had Assistant Superintendent Lightfoot tell us what he knew, what the impact was going to be on Hopkins for all the legislative changes. I will say there's a lot unknown still at this point. We aren't sure. I think we'll have to go through it 1 year following the legislative session to determine what the benefits and the costs and the downsides and upsides are of the just concluded legislative session. So on May 26th, the following day, I attended the AMSD meeting to debrief regarding the just concluded legislative session. So got to hear some representatives from the Minnesota Department of Education talk about the changes and give us the good news and the bad news, and commiserate with my fellow board members and superintendents from other districts that were at the session. And then today was graduation, which is always fun.
Thank you, Director Adams. So I wanted to make sure our community knows that we have 4 seats on the school board that are up for election this November in the general election. And so as is our practice as a board, we'll be holding a candidate information session on June 13th from 6 to 7 p.m. So any community members who are interested in learning about the work of the board and what it's what it's like to run for the school board. You are invited to join us here, either in the physical space, or we will be streaming it on the school board page of the website, on YouTube, and then recording that video, and it will live on the school board page this summer and into the fall for folks who are looking for that information. Some great community events coming up. There is an inaugural Hopkins event called Minnesota Roots that's taking place on June 17th from 4 to 7 p.m. It is an event to commemorate Juneteenth, and there is a Hopkins City Council meeting happening right now, just like Tuesday nights are just like a big night in Hopkins, and where they are hopefully passing a resolution around Juneteenth and this event. Hopkins Pride is taking place the same day on June 17th. That is in the morning, kind of to the mid-afternoon, so you can just make a day of it on Main Street. I should have mentioned the Minnesota Roots event is taking place at the Hopkins Center for the Arts, and then Hopkins Pride is taking place all up and down Main Street. And then Golden Valley Pride is this coming Saturday on June 10th. So exciting Pride months ahead. I was doing a little bit of my own kind of lifelong learning this morning, listening to a podcast, which is one of my favorite things to do. I was listening to the You're Wrong About podcast, and they have a great episode on the Stonewall Uprising of 1969. And as I was listening to it, I was struck by this idea of how much invisible and unrecognized, unacknowledged labor goes into liberation movements, and that has certainly been the case with queer liberation. And then simultaneously, how visibility is both critical to liberation and can be dangerous, both physically and psychologically, for queer people and all marginalized people. It made me think about how growing up as a queer person in the 80s and 90s in this community, I didn't have the language, the framework, the understanding, or the psychological safety to express who I was. Nor did I have immediate role models or leaders in my community who were LGBTQ+. And as I was listening and kind of reflecting on my own journey, I was celebrating how far we've come as a district. We have a gender inclusion policy, GSAs and QSAs in nearly every school, curricula that's becoming more inclusive of the lived experiences of our LGBTQ+ scholars and and staff who openly affirm and value the identities of our scholars, families, caregivers, and colleagues. This has been the result of both highly visible and invisible labor by queer members of our community and allies. At the same time, as a queer parent of a gender-expansive scholar, I see that we still have a lot of work to do for the true liberation of LGBTQ+ people in our spaces. One example of this is the urgent work we have to do to ensure that we have well-marked, safe, and accessible gender-inclusive bathrooms in all, not just some, of our buildings. And I'd like to thank our scholars, our caregivers, especially the caregivers who are part of the Parents and Caregivers of Gender Expansive Scholars group, our staff, certainly our buildings and facilities staff, and our leaders for your labor. We also need to make sure that all of our staff are responsive to the identities, including the names and pronouns and needs of our LGBTQ+ scholars. Our curriculum must continue to reflect the history and realities of LGBTQ+ people. And when community members express their disagreement with that, we need to remind them that queer people exist and that public schools serve everyone. We also need to continue to be principled enough as leaders and community members to say that LGBTQ+ people belong in our larger Hopkins Schools community, and that pride flags are a symbol of who we are as an inclusive community, and that we will not debate whether queer people deserve to thrive, much less exist, right here, exactly as we are. Wishing you a reflective and joyful Pride. Any other board member reports? So with that, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So move. Second.
Oh, wow. I have a motion, a second to adjourn. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. This meeting of the Hopkins School Board is adjourned at 8:41 PM.